Should pale death with treble dread make the ocean caves our bed, God who hears the surges roll, deign to save the suppliant soul. To 4 weeks.
To 4 weeks. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of our podcast, Two Guys, One Necronomicon, where today we'll be discussing The Lighthouse.
Oh yes, we will, Shane Roy. And we are the podcast that manufactures kerosene oil to drink.
Are we really now?
We've gone that far.
Okay, that's what we were clinking in our cups at the beginning of this podcast, I believe. Kerosene.
Yeah, we've just been drinking kerosene. We've been going insane after watching The Lighthouse, which is, spoiler alert, incredible.
Yes. Absolutely amazing movie.
Like I was telling Shane before the podcast, I know the movie didn't come out this year, but it's my favorite movie that I've watched this year, and probably the best horror movie I've seen since Midsummer.
Yeah, most likely. I would have to really think about everything I've seen, but I would probably say most likely that's been the best I've seen.
There's a lot we can say about this movie,
Yes.
especially if you're the kind of folk that likes madness, mythology, and mermaid vaginas.
Yes. That was something I didn't expect to ever see in my life, but now I can say I've seen it.
Yeah, and we will unpack literally everything in this episode. By the way, if you haven't noticed, we have created a Twitter page.
Yes, that is correct. Our Twitter page is Two Guys, One Necronomicon at Two Guys, One Necro.
So please give that a follow. And we're also considering even maybe creating a Facebook group for horror fans as well.
Yes, we have been talking about that, possibly making an Instagram account as well.
Yeah.
All things that are being discussed. But if you don't follow any of that, just remember, each one of our podcast episodes will air Monday mornings at 6 a.m.
That is every Monday at 6 a.m. You can surely join us for at least an hour and 10 minutes of hell.
Pretty much. So why don't you introduce who we are for people who are just listening for the first time?
So if you don't know by now, my name is Bryan Hotboy LaGrasta, and as always my co-host Shane the White Devil Smith.
El Diablo Blanco, as they like to say.
And boy, as ever, does he look hot right now.
This is true. I am sporting the finest glasses and mustache.
This is a quarantine mustache. I had a quarantine beard. I shaved that thing.
It was probably because of the mask.
It was raccoonish. Yeah, the mask. Because you can't wear a quarantine mask and a beard. It's like a combo that cannot happen in nature.
It's a lot of itching, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's itchy. It's uncomfortable. It really grinds my gears, Shane boy.
Okay. Well, let's get into it, because there's a lot to unpack in this movie.
There really is. You guys are in for it. So, this movie is about two lighthouse keepers fending off madness of isolation while living 4 weeks on a small, remote New England island. Some cool things about this movie I'd like to mention before we get into the synopsis.
Let me hear them.
And if you don't know by now, we actually don't just talk about the movie. We give you every scene of the movie, almost word by word, quote by quote, and then we follow that up with a review on a scoring of 1 to 10.
Yes.
1 being a piece of garbage, 10 being a masterpiece, and 5 being that middle point of where it's just decent enough to watch again, maybe.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
So some cool things about this movie, and if you know nothing about this movie, it stars Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, who together are just absolutely
phenomenal.
Yes.
It also stars a mermaid.
As mermaid.
I don't know her name, but she is a mermaid.
I think her name is Valerie Caraman.
Well, she was a good mermaid.
All she had to do was screech.
She was part siren.
Yes, we will get into everything.
I can't wait.
So excited. So, cool thing about this lighthouse is it actually was not a lighthouse. They constructed this thing.
Okay.
They built it on Cape Fortune, Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I did hear the movie was filmed in Canada.
And what's cool about it is I believe that people in the neighboring town wanted to keep that structure built that Roger Eggers who I didn't mention, has directed a previous movie called The Witch, which was incredible. This is his second film, equally incredible.
Yes. I like The Lighthouse more.
As do I.
But The Witch is still an amazing... We'll get into ratings later, so I don't want to spoil that yet.
Yeah. Both incredible. So he constructs this lighthouse. The townspeople actually wanted to keep the lighthouse there, but they had to take it down because there's like liability issues with it, like in case it fell over or something like that. Because I guess they do get strong weather coming in from the coast,
or maybe they don't want a boat accidentally thinking it's a real lighthouse or guy, even though there's GPS systems now. But you never know.
In back-to-back weeks, we are doing movies that are in black and white.
Yes. Good note to put out early.
So Robert Eggers, this guy is such an up-and-comer. He's so brilliant. And he does so much research into like the dialect and the history. Wherever he is, he takes you to that time period.
Yes. If you haven't seen The Witch, which is his first movie, it takes place in the 1600s about-ish. It's very olden English language that's... At times it is hard to understand. I would recommend watching The Witch with subtitles.
Absolutely, we have to. It's like this old Puritan speak.
Yeah, but that doesn't take away from the movie at all. It's still a great piece of storytelling.
So in this movie, I guess to depict that style of the 1890s, they shot this film on 35mm black and white, utilizing a Baltar lens, which was only used from a time period of 1918 to 1938. And what this did was it created an aspect ratio of 1:19:1, that kind of box square frame, so you're not getting it.
Well, that's right. When I put on, I watched it off Amazon Prime, and I was like, all right, it's a very tight movie.
This is what you're getting.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is to keep both of these men on the screen together, and you only see them in the shot.
Yeah, you don't see anything else.
Yeah, so it's a very powerful style of filmmaking, and like I mentioned, this guy takes you so deep into the culture, into the dialect, and into that time period. What's interesting is his accents. So Robert Pattinson is based his accent on a Maine farming dialect, and Willem Dafoe is based off the language of Atlantic sailors of the era.
I believe that. While watching this movie, I almost forgot Willem Dafoe wasn't actually just a sailor. Like,
I know.
Like, you forget, like, oh yeah, this is Willem Dafoe. He's been in Platoon and Spider-Man. You feel like you're just like, this guy's a real sailor. That's how good he is with the accent.
So much raw masculine energy in this movie.
There is a lot of masculine things in this movie.
And they work so well together. And I think what's equally cool is I read that they didn't really have they didn't really know each other prior to going into this film, and they didn't spend a lot of time together prior.
They spent a lot of time together in the movie.
Exactly. So they kind of got to know each other while making this. And I was reading interviews of Eggers, and he basically said that Robert Pattinson is like a psychopath on set.
Really?
Yeah. Like there were shots of him like pounding himself in the face to get him like, oh, this movie's full of monologues.
Yeah.
So every time he's getting pumped up for a big scene, he's like punching himself in the face. There's parts where he starts like jumping around and like dancing and swinging prior to a scene, and there's even grosser parts that freaked Willem Dafoe out of him actually sticking his fingers down his mouth, making himself gag.
Huh. Well, I was excited to see him as Batman. I'm even more excited to see him as Batman now, because I can only imagine what he's going to bring to that role.
Yeah, these guys are so intense, and it makes this movie just so absolutely incredible. I can go on forever, but I think it's just, we got to get into it.
Yes, I can't wait. So basically, this movie opens up. It's one of the only other times you're going to see a different person that isn't Willem Dafoe or Robert Pattinson. They get brought to the lighthouse.
Yeah, you kind of don't see their faces at this point. You see them coming in on like a small sailboat.
Yeah.
And you just hear the sound of the boat chugging on the water as it comes to shore.
Yeah.
You see them kind of carrying this case up to the lighthouse, and you see the previous two lightkeepers coming back. So if you say they were leaving these guys for duty for 4 weeks.
Exactly. So just a quick synopsis of what it is. The lighthouse keepers work in 4-week shifts. So you're there for 4 weeks, just the two of you, and then your relief comes at the end of that 4 weeks. 2 more people come, and then you get to leave.
Yeah, what's cool about this movie is it was also based off actual real-life tale of 2 Welsh lighthouse keepers. And it's a very tragic story, actually. The younger one does kill the older one.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was called the Smalls Lighthouse Tragedy.
Okay.
So it's loosely based off that.
All right, I've never heard of it, but I if this movie's anything like that, that was a crazy incident.
Yeah. As they're going into the lighthouse now and getting ready for the 4-week shift, I found it very interesting that there's this shot of them together at the beginning of the movie. It's just them looking into the camera for like a solid 30 seconds.
Yes.
Together. And almost telling the audience, you're going to be seeing us for 2 hours.
And that's it.
Enjoy. Because we're going to take you on a ride. And we're not going to be the same people coming out.
They're definitely not.
And it's interesting because like Willem Dafoe like walks off the scene. Names are very hard to talk about in this movie. So
all right, so yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but the thing about it, you actually don't learn either of their name until about half hour into this movie.
So let's just refer to them by Dafoe and Pattinson.
And yeah, for the time being, because they don't know each other's name, and as a viewer, you don't know either of their name either.
Yeah, so we can just say like at this point, Robert Pattinson is Ephraim Winslow.
Yes.
And Willem Dafoe is Thomas Wake.
Correct.
But there's a long shot, and Willem Dafoe leaves the shot, so you just see Robert Pattinson's face for like a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like looking into the camera, almost past the camera, and he's like, I am a completely different person in about an hour and 45 minutes. And not only that, then the shot like looks off into the ocean, and then you just hear the most annoying foghorn sound. A sound that will haunt you for the remainder of this movie.
Yeah.
Because this sound persists for the entirety of the film, non-stop, a doldrum beating of a foghorn. This coupled with the sounds of sirens, screeching, winds, tons of seagulls.
Oh, there's a seagull in this movie that I would consider the third main character of the film.
It actually is.
Yeah.
No joke.
The seagull was great.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Okay, so what happens is they start settling into their quarters. Ephraim, he walks upstairs. Ephraim, obviously, Robert Pattinson. He walks upstairs, bangs his head on the ceiling, an indication that, wow, 2 men, there's going to be a problem. This place is really compact for 2 people.
And it's definitely going to be a problem because Willem Dafoe character farts.
He farts
a lot.
Farts a lot and often. So he plays like this old seaman. Like, he has mentioned that he's been at sea. He loves the sea. He's been out there for a while. He can no longer handle the sea because he's got a peg leg.
Mm-hmm.
But he plays like this old guy. You're going to hear a lot of tales, a lot of stories. He's got that old seafaring accent like I mentioned. And he's a farter.
Yes. So the first time he farts completely threw me off guard for the tone of this movie. Like, and I was laughing.
Yeah, let me get a rewind on that.
Because they're just in the bunk. And like Robert Pattinson sits down and then he farts. And it's just like, I was not expecting a fart.
Like, Eggers, let me get that one more time.
Yeah. But it's a reoccurring thing in this movie. With Willem Dafoe's character, you learn... So basically, he's like Bryan was saying, the veteran. He's been a lighthouse keeper. This is Robert Pattinson's first time ever doing this job.
And what's so cool is, you know nothing about his past.
No.
They're just there. You slowly get to hear about Dafoe's because he tells stories.
Yes.
But Pattinson, it takes him a while to loosen up.
Yeah.
He will, but it takes him a while. So you know nothing about him for about 35 minutes.
But the thing I love about this movie is, you never know who's telling the truth or lying about their past.
Exactly, because their perspectives are constantly swapped.
Yes, which is, there's certain things that are going to be said later that we'll get into that completely contradict each other.
Correct. And it makes this film absolutely brilliant. After he farts, Robert Pattinson starts settling down on his mattress, and he notices there's a hole in the mattress. Shane, what's in the freaking mattress, dude?
It is a wooden mermaid statue. Now, the thing with this hole in the mattress is it's like dead center of the mattress.
Yeah, it's hard to miss, which is why he had to stick his fingers in there and see what was in there.
Yeah, so he starts fingering around in the mattress hole, and he pulls up this mermaid statue.
You're a big fan of fingering holes.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the mermaid statue...
Yeah, so he basically puts the statue in his pocket for later use. He's like, I have a strong connection with this wooden figurine.
It's going to play a big part in a scene later that's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, and that foghorn, like I mentioned, is ceaseless, and it's picking up, and it's getting louder.
So, as this time goes, right after that, they show Robert Pattinson, I guess, doing some of his chores where he's, like, shoveling coal into a furnace and things of that nature.
This movie, both these guys have watches, and At dinner, Wake, who is Defoe's character, pretty much establishes the routine, what's going to be going down. Ephraim will be doing the grunt work.
Mm-hmm. Which is everything that can be done on this island, pretty much.
Yeah, so Pattinson's doing the grunt work. Defoe will be guarding the light on top of the lighthouse.
Yes, that is pretty much Defoe's only job in this movie is to guard the lighthouse light and to write in his notebook about Robert Pattinson. Basically, since he's the leader, he keeps notes of if Pattinson's doing his job or not.
So they're at dinner, and they're toasting, and the toast is actually the quote from the beginning of this episode.
Exactly.
After he gives the toast to 4 weeks, Pattinson refuses the toast. He doesn't want to drink. He mentions, it's against Dem's manual in his dialect. It's against Dem's manual.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, I don't get any drink. It's against Dem's manual.
Mm-hmm. But Defoe keeps insisting. He's like, you can do it. It's fine. Have a toast.
Eventually, he does succumb to drink. This is where he's get ready to clean that cistern. Get ready to clean the quarters, swab the deck. You're doing all of the grunt work. And reluctantly,
he agrees to do it. But this is where Robert Pattinson asks, when do I get to do the lighthouse shift, the actual guard the light?
Because it's in Dem's manual.
Exactly. And Defoe says, never. He's like, that's my light. You're not going near it.
Yep.
So a lot of the movie is Robert Pattinson wanting to get up to the top of the lighthouse, to the light, but he can't because Defoe won't let him.
Yeah. This is right then where you see the eyes of Pattinson, and he is not happy, and you can see this is going to be the tension of the movie between these two guys. A young, mysterious guy against this old
sailor,
who are together alone to spend all these moments in this crammed lighthouse. Not to mention with annoying seagulls, shifting winds, and crazy torrential downpours.
So after dinner, that's when Defoe goes up to the lighthouse, and you just see, in a really cool shot, it's just Defoe kind of sitting on the light, and you see like you see his bare chest, and you see the ship tattooed like on his chest, and then while he's doing that, you see Robert Pattinson's character walking down by the water, and now he starts walking closer and closer to the water, and you see a bunch of timber like logs, and then as he gets closer, he sees in the middle of the logs a body floating, and then he starts walking closer and closer, and he's like in the water, and it's about to go over his head, and the water then kind of consumes him, and then he wakes up in his bed.
Yep. So, I mean, we could take this a bunch of ways, but let's just say he's having
nightmares.
A nightmare.
For now.
Yeah. Let's just say he's having a nightmare.
Yes. Without getting into what it actually means yet.
When he's submerged in that water, because not only do you see a body there, you see it's like a guy, you could tell it's whitish hair.
Yeah, it's a guy with whitish hair.
There's a mermaid down there.
Yes, the mermaid does come this early.
And you hear like a light sound of a screech. And trust me, that is not the last time you'll see that merfolk.
Yes. And it's not the last time you'll hear her screech.
Oh my god, shiny boy. So as Ephraim wakes up, he receives his daily task from Wake. And continuously he succumbs to saying, "Aye, sir, I'll listen to you, I'll do what you have to do." We have 4 weeks together. So he starts fixing shingles. And he removes a hole. And what does he see through that hole, Shane? Right?
Okay, so I was actually going to ask you this. Does he see Willem Dafoe fucking the bed hole?
Maybe. I just thought he was masturbating.
Okay.
You're right. Maybe he was banging. The thing is, I thought that was Pattinson's bed, unless they're swapping beds, which I would not doubt now thinking about it. With how these characters swap their stories.
So exactly. That's what, because he was like kind of like face down, right?
Yeah.
So the way I took it is that's why there was that hole dead center in the bed, is that he was...
It's very possible. Either way, he was doing some sexual act on the mattress.
Yeah. I took it he was using the hole. So that's why you got to be careful when you're replacing someone's shingles. You never know what you're going to see underneath.
Shingles is bad. It's also bad? One-eyed seagulls. Because that's what Ephraim sees, Pattinson, mind you, outside of the lighthouse.
And this seagull, it's just kind of like eyeing him up, like really like mad dog.
And you say eyeing him up because he has one eye.
Yes, the seagull does only have one eye.
And he just squawks at him, and he's trying to shoo him away, and he can't get him away.
And the seagull's like, "Yo, this is my home. I ain't moving."
So he tries to peg him with a rock, and eventually he flies away.
Yeah, the seagull's like, "All right, I'll be back though."
And guess who looks at him on top of the lighthouse? You see Thomas Wake looking at him, almost in disapproval. Because he's an old man of the sea, Defoe's character Wake, he's going to constantly blame Pattinson for doing things that are bad omens.
Yes. Basically, he believes in, like, all the old wives' sea tales and all those things. Like, he would probably believe in, like, Davy Jones' locker and stuff like that. So he believes it's a bad omen to, like, kill a seabird.
He would not be a fan of us landlubbers.
No, he would not. Arr.
So, at this point, he's still doing his daily task. Pattinson brings up a drum of oil to the light. He sees out, and he spots an opportunity to get up to where that light is.
Yeah, but who's up there, Bryan?
Wake is up there.
Yeah.
He's up there, and he tells him, he's like, you're not going up there. You ain't getting up there. And by the way, why'd you bring this really heavy oil drum up there? You could have brought up this little can.
And he's like, no, bring that back downstairs.
Not only like, okay, do it later. He's like, you bring that back down, like, now.
Yeah, he's like, I ain't having this up here.
He just gives him a look. He's like, you kidding me, old man?
Yeah.
He's like, literally, you could have told me this, and I didn't have to almost break my back bringing this up here.
Ephraim is not happy with this, like, at all.
And he's like, are you a dullard?
Yeah.
He's like, well, no, sir. Fooled me. And then he goes up to the lighthouse and slams the door.
Yep. Yeah, so basically, Defoe has just basically berated Robert Pattinson through most of the movie so far.
Pattinson holds at times like these sinister smiles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these grins. Like, what is this guy thinking? What's his past? Something's up with him, and we're gonna find out.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, they have a conversation where Willem Dafoe tells Robert about his last Lighthouse partner and how his last partner went mad and died. Now, I don't remember. Does he say how his partner died in this scene, or does he just mention his partner had died?
Yeah, he says that he went mad, raving about sirens, merfolk, and bad omens.
Right.
And he also mentioned that the man believed there was an enchantment in the light, and that Saint Elmo casted a fire into it. And Ephraim kind of dismisses this. But how he dies, I don't believe he mentions the exact way.
Okay. Basically, at this point, you could draw your conclusion. Did the guy kill himself because he went mad? Is Willem Dafoe hiding things and he actually killed his last Lighthouse partner? Because still up to this point, you really don't know much about either of these two characters' backstories. You just know they have to be at this lighthouse for 4 weeks.
And he keeps kind of proposing drinks to him at night. So, like, it's during the day, they're, like, arguing. It's like a cycle, almost. Arguing during the daytime. At night, they're drinking. Why do they drink? Because sailors love to drink. And Thomas Week, Defoe's character, mentions boredom is like a sailor's worst enemy. Mm-hmm. So you drink to relieve your boredom.
Yes.
And all these tales that he's mentioning, all these stories, Winslow's dismissing them. Pattinson's character is constantly dismissing these stories. Tall tales, I'm going to ignore you. And get back to my duties and outlast these 4 weeks.
So at this point, I believe it's after another dinner, after he tells Robert Pattinson about his last lighthouse keeper. He tells Robert Pattinson that it's bad luck to kill a seabird.
Yes.
We go to a scene of Robert Pattinson jerking off, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's just happening. And
yeah, it's weird because you see the gull like pecking out the window.
Yeah.
And he gets up and shoos him away. He sees the mermaid figurine on his bed. And then he just starts making.
Yes. We could call it either or.
You hear him moaning. Obviously, he's masturbating. And then the scene kind of goes black. And you hear, like, the ocean, like, hit the rocks.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
That's what
happened. I see what you did there.
Yeah. Clever way to do it.
Oh, my God.
And that's when he goes, now, see, so he's done. So he decides just to go for another walk at night. And then he looks up at the lighthouse, and he just sees Defoe posing, like, in the light, kind of.
Yeah, and he looks naked. And,
yeah, that's what I thought too.
We're left to think, is Defoe having some kind of weird sexual experiences up there near the light? And, to be honest with you, I'm saying yes.
Oh, without a doubt. Throughout the movie, you almost feel like Defoe's wife is the lighthouse.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
He refers to it as his beauty, how he'd rather have that to a family life.
Yeah.
He's in love with the light. What I'd also say is, a little bit before, we had a little altercation at a dinner where Defoe's character just slaps Pattinson across the face.
Yeah.
So their tension is definitely rising. The reason why he slapped them is because he does not take kindly to Pattinson making fun of his stories or mocking him.
Yeah, he essentially, because he doesn't believe anything Defoe is saying in terms of the sea stories.
You see the two men argue again during the day. As I mentioned, this is kind of a continuous cycle between these two characters. Ephraim Winslow, Robert Pattinson, was not doing a good job of swabbing the deck.
No, he was not. So Defoe just yells at him, says he has to do better, says he has to scrub better. Rob says he's done it. Defoe doesn't believe him. But at that point, Rob is kind of getting fed up, and he's like, I'm no housewife.
Yeah, he's like, I ain't no slave.
Yeah. So he's upset. And Defoe says if he ever contradicts what he says again, he will dock his wages.
A phrase he kind of continuously says.
Yes. He is always threatening that he's going to take away the pay, which would be such a shitty situation if you spend 4 weeks at a lighthouse and don't get paid at the end of it.
Yeah, I know. Oh my goodness.
Especially if you're 4 weeks with Willem Dafoe's character. That has to be miserable.
And I'm thinking to myself, in all honesty, Shane, 4 weeks in a lighthouse, right? Nobody around you.
Mm-hmm.
You have limited supplies of food.
Yep.
Apparently you have more drink, probably, than food. And you're with a guy you don't like. Even though it's a short stint of time, you're going to start being overcome with these emotions of anger, of frustration, of disdain. And that's kind of what you see Winslow's characters go through. And like I mentioned, we don't know much about his past, and he seems, honestly, kind of like a psychopath.
Oh yeah, he gives crazy vibes constantly. Just the way he, stares off and, looks angry and just, he's just creepy. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. So after this whole altercation, Ephraim says, I can just say, I, sir, I'll swab the floor again. And he says, good. And he calls him a dog, which is kind of an important phrase, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Calls him a dog. And then you see, him doing more work, cleaning the oil drums. And then, of course, Wake is right behind him, just cataloging his record shamelessly.
That is all he's doing.
It's unreal. And then they have a very quiet dinner, kind of recapping this day. No one's really saying much.
They basically don't speak at all during the dinner. But then it goes to the next day, where it opens with Ephraim Winslow hanging over the lighthouse, painting it, while Willem Dafoe is holding a rope to hold him up.
If this ain't an operation for disaster, I don't know what is. The drunken old sailor on the top.
Yeah.
Who looks like he's 75 at least.
Being the only person holding the rope between you and the ground. And, of course, what happens?
He falls.
Yeah. I didn't see it coming.
He's like, I got you, kid. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. He's like, this thing is already creaking, and I'm falling 10 feet every time, and eventually he hits the ground.
Yes. He does fall a little bit before he does the full fall, so he doesn't fall from the top of the lighthouse, just to clarify that.
He's fine. No broken bones or anything. He does fall unconscious and then kind of wakes up. And he wakes up
with the one-eyed seagull ripping his pants.
Yeah, he kind of just pecking at his, legs.
Yeah, his leggings, whatever the thing is he's wearing.
Yeah.
His sea trousers.
The seaman's trousers. So, after this scene, there's a shot of Wake writing in his logbook, finishing up, and he just seems super satisfied with what he's writing. He takes this large, it's almost like a grimoire. This thing is ginormous. He closes it, puts it in this cabinet, and stows it away, lock and key.
Yes.
Ephraim, of course, peeking in and watching this whole scene. So now he knows where the logbook is, and he needs to find out what's in the logbook and what is Wake writing about him. So at dinner at this point, we learn a little bit about Ephraim Winslow, a.k.a. Robert Pattinson's past.
So we finally learn his name. This is actually the first time in the movie you learn one of their names. Robert Pattinson says, my name is Ephraim Winslow. And he also says he worked up north in Big Timber.
Big Timber, I believe it's Canada for the Hudson Bay outfit.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Big Timber, so tell us all about it.
It's good wood.
Yeah.
Good log. Just a note, he worked in Big Timber. Shane, did we see timber before in this movie?
I don't know. Yes, we did see timber before. We saw it floating when he had that dream sequence. That's the noise Robert Pattinson makes later in the movie.
So then Wake reveals a little bit about himself. That the sea is the only place for him to work. He misses it greatly, but said he can't sell anymore. He's got a peg leg. But now he's wedded to the lighthouse, and she's been a fine wife for him.
Winslow admits that he hasn't really kept a job. He moves from job to job, so he never really stays in one place all at once. And then I'm like, all right, if this guy couldn't seem any sketchier, he seems very sketchy now. And then he says, one of my favorite lines, just because it's kind of funny hearing it, he's like, I just want to work at a job where I could earn $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, man.
And he's like, I heard that if I become a wiki, a wiki is what they call lighthouse keepers, I guess, in the 1890s.
Yeah.
He could do well for himself and potentially, start fresh and buy that house he always wanted.
Yes, that probably $500 house. This is also where Defoe mentions now that the gulls actually have the souls of dead sailors in them. And that's why they're like a sacred bird.
So, Shane, I guess that's why it's bad luck to kill a gull.
Yeah, because then you'd be killing the soul of an already dead sailor. And no one wants to do that.
And these sailors have met their maker.
Yes. I also believe Willem Dafoe is knitting in this scene.
Yeah, I read a little trivia about this movie. He actually learned how to knit for the role.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's weird, though. Isn't this the only scene where he knits?
Yeah.
So he learned specifically for this 5-minute scene?
No joke. These guys... Robert Pattinson has got to be a method actor.
Yeah, well,
no doubt.
He's the next Daniel Day-Lewis at this point.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about him? He was given 2 scripts for prior movies by Robert Eggers. Mm-hmm. He turned them both down because they were not crazy enough for him.
Fascinating.
He read this script. He's like, okay, this will do. This works. And if you don't know by now, our enthusiasm, me and Shane both love Robert Pattinson. And we also love Defoe as well, of course. I just, obviously, adore Robert Pattinson and his work. The guy is bar none, will be an Oscar winner at some point. No doubt about it.
I definitely agree. But now we go into another scene that I like. So after the knitting and the talking again, Winslow tries to go to sleep, but he can't fall asleep. So what does he do? He does what he does every night. He goes out to take a walk. Except this time he doesn't go down by the water. He goes into the lighthouse. And then he looks up. And you see what looks like, again, Willem Dafoe having some kind of sexual relations with the lighthouse. He's moaning heavily. And then this, now, you don't know what it is. You can take a guess, but this white substance falls from the top and lands, on Robert Pattinson. And he's just like, what is this? And then you just see tentacles shooting around up top.
Tentacles near the lighthouse. You can only assume this is kind of like another nightmare.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing with this scene. It doesn't lead into him being back in bed or into anything else. It just cuts into him doing his chores the next day.
They just kind of blend nightmare with isolation so well that you kind of confuse conflate the two.
So at this point, you're like, did he have another nightmare? Was there actually a tentacle that Willem Dafoe was like...
Asking me? I think both. No, but they lead you to believe either could be true.
Right, yeah. Which is what I like. You got to kind of come up with your own interpretation. Next morning, first thing that Robert Pattinson sees is the seagull in that, what is it? It's not a septic tank, but...
It's a cistern, right?
Yeah, that's it. The cistern. Couldn't think of the word.
And by the way, this cistern looks repulsive. After the whole movie, they're kind of talking about how terrible their drinks are. And this is why. This cistern is unholy.
Yes, especially when it has a dead bird in it. And then the one-eyed bird comes there and starts squawking at him.
How do you stop this one-eyed gull from squawking, Shane?
There's really only one way to do it. You grab it by its throat and repeatedly smash it into a rock.
So this is not killing a bird. This is not putting it down. This is... mutilating a bird.
It is an absolute massacre of this poor bird.
And did Wade previously say something about bad luck being killing a seabird?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure he said it's awful luck because they have the soul of sailors.
And as he's killing this bird, you hear the neighboring seagulls up top, because there's thousands of them in this movie, and they are not happy. No. It's almost like they have a presence, and they know that their buddy just got whacked. And it kind of, you could think, these seabirds might have the souls of dead sailors.
Yeah.
And they're seeing a fellow sailor getting rocked.
Exactly. Winslow goes back inside. Defoe and him start talking a little bit. That's when you find out it's the 4 weeks is up. They're getting off the rock tomorrow.
Yeah.
But Defoe says, it looks like a storm's brewing.
And what's interesting, right after he smashes that bird, the camera pans up the lighthouse, and you see the wind dial change. Yep. Now there's like a northeastern, it shifts to a northeastern wind. He mentions bad weather's coming. So this omen is coming to fruition.
Yes. Basically, Willem Dafoe has been correct. Killing a seabird is bad luck because this storm is not going to be good. But they don't know that yet. So what do? It's their last night. They finally drink, they dance, and they have fun together.
They have a rockin' night. And this is the kind of night that reminds me of Shane at Rowan Teak. Now, if you want to see a guy have fun, watch Shane at a frat party.
No. No.
Shane was wearing those girls like Halloween costumes.
Where were we before that happened?
So at dinner, they start dancing, and they start drinking a lot, and they start singing. Shane, what do they start doing? They start singing shanties.
Yeah, well, of course, you gotta sing your sea shanties at your last night. That's it.
I would have hated this movie if there was no shanties. Thank God we got them.
Also, fun fact, this is where you finally learn Willem Dafoe's name.
Yeah, he finally mentions his name as
Thomas Wake.
They kind of talk about, like, so old man, why haven't I worked the light? And he goes, you will. You work the light. You done good. You done good, and you'll be working it in no time. Just not this light.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be a wiki and work the light, somewhere.
Basically, when I'm not with you, you can do it. All that happens that night. They wake up the next morning, and now this is where the real bad omen starts. Because Robert Pattinson has to go to the bathroom. This is a long night drinking. So he sees the poop and the pee cup. He picks them both up. And he's walking with them outside for a while. And you're like, all right, I guess he's got, he's going to the edge. There's a couple edges he could have went to, but he keeps going. And then he flips them both out, and the wind instantly picks up and blows them all into his face, and he just screams.
Yeah. He's like, ah!
And
rightfully so. Who wants shit in their face? Who wants feces in their face, Shane?
Exactly. Especially Willem Dafoe's.
Like, things couldn't get any worse. The weather's bad. I got this crap in my face. I gotta live with freaking Thomas Wake.
Yeah.
For another day.
And then, as soon as that happens, though, it starts pouring. And that's when he finds a dead girl wrapped in seaweed.
At this point, our Ephraim Winslow might be thinking, maybe this is legitimately a bad omen. I'm denying it because of my pride, but,
yeah,
maybe. So things start getting worse, and he just pictures, like Shane mentioned, a dead girl in seaweed. And
he starts unwrapping her.
Oh, man. He starts unwrapping her, and what is it? It's a mermaid.
It's a mermaid who definitely starts screeching like a siren.
You see him, oh my god. So you see him masturbating to this mermaid throughout the film, and now you see the mermaid.
Okay.
And the shot shows her face, right? And she's not awake. It scrolls down. You see kind of like her, you want to see like what the tail looks like, but she got some weird looking skin down there. And as Shane just mentioned, she starts to screech. And this is a freaking creepy screech.
Yeah, it's loud, it's eerie, and he runs.
Yeah, he's scared. And I'll be honest with you, Robert Eggers is a master of manufacturing horror. There's really nothing on this rock. There is a lighthouse and two guys, a bunch of seagulls, and a foghorn. What he does with this limited space, a lighthouse, a foghorn that constantly beats, a screech, and a mermaid, he blends into this horror that is just so frustrating and so unnerving, and you're constantly like made uncomfortable throughout the entire film. And he does the same thing in The Witch too. He makes a goat look like the most terrifying thing you've ever seen.
It's true. So after he runs away, he goes back into the house. Him and Willem Dafoe pack up their stuff. They go outside in the rain, and they stand there. And it's just a shot of them standing in the rain waiting for the relief that is never going to come.
Wake, it didn't come.
Nope. I believe this is when they start talking just a little bit after that. It cuts to another scene. Ephraim says, "It's been a day. I'm sure they're going to come for us." And then Thomas says, "It's been weeks and they haven't come." Is Robert Pattinson losing his mind? Is Willem Dafoe lying to mess with him?
I think that's the brilliant part of the film. You really don't know. It could be one or the other. It could be both.
It's shot at the beginning where you're seeing this, and then the 4 weeks are just up. So it's like, okay, obviously he's not filming it long, so maybe it it has been weeks. It's very realistic that it's been weeks, but you just don't know. Like,
and it's almost, watching this movie, it can be interpreted in many ways, but you could be almost thinking, like, Wake is implanting these ideas in his head to drive him mad.
Exactly.
Just keep him at a distance and to just drive him slowly mad.
Well, because he did say his last partner went mad. Maybe this is what he does to drive them mad. You think it's a day. He's saying it's weeks. I mean, you've already been there so long. It's like, what's real anymore? But then, that's when Tom says, well, looks like we gotta get the rations, basically. So they go dig up what looks like is a bunch of alcohol and...
bottles, yeah.
Yeah, just bottles.
Yep.
So the rations isn't food. It's just more drink.
Exactly. That's why I mentioned that. It's more important to these guys than food. Well, especially Wake.
Yeah.
It's more important to him.
So then, while they're having dinner and they're having their newfound drink, Defoe starts telling a story, and Ephraim sees a knife on the table. And he takes the knife and he hides it in his pocket.
He's suspicious.
Yes.
That he's not only messing, they've been drinking, thinks he's been lying to him about the time that they've been there, guarding the lighthouse. And then Wake tells him a drunken story about how scurvy took his leg. And then Ephraim kind of calls him out on it. He's like, didn't you tell me previously that you broke the leg? Not that you gave him scurvy? And then Wake's like, nah, you must have heard wrong, kid. You must have heard wrong.
Which now we know, it's like, okay, Thomas Wake does lie about stories. So maybe he has been lying about how long they've been there.
Exactly.
But then you still don't know really much about Ephraim's background other than the timber story. So it's like, who's who?
And they are crazy drunk at this point.
Yes.
And when I'm saying drunk, I'm saying picture Shane at a Rutgers frat party.
That never happened. I really didn't drink in college.
And while drunk, Winslow gets a little slipping of the tongue, and he tells him just like, Wake, how much Ephraim has ridden him in the past. And you're like, Ephraim is talking about Ephraim riding him in the past. I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
It's like, is this a case of mistaken identity? Are you just really stupid drunk? Or are you referring to someone else that has your name? So Ephraim also questions a previous story from Wake. Wake mentions about how he had his men eat grass when he was sailing. Ephraim's like, well, your men, they had no teeth. So how could they eat grass? Animals who eat grass, they all have them's teeth.
Yeah, they have them's teeth.
My accent is just like, I'm going like really... I'm going like down south and not up north.
You're not an actor. It's okay. They can excuse. He's doing his best.
I'm trying out here. So Ephraim mocks the idea and then tells him he just doesn't believe him. He doubts it. And then both men, they're sitting across from each other.
What?
And this is a... What?
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 Whoa! What? What?
So that happens.
They yell what at each other probably close to 100 times.
And it is glorious.
It is. It's absolutely fantastic to watch.
Then Ephraim's like, you know what? I want a steak.
Yeah.
I want a Morton steak right now.
I want a steak so bad I could fuck the steak.
Literally says that.
Yes, he does.
And then he's like, Wake, I don't like your cooking. And then he mocks his cooking. And he takes this to heart.
He does.
Wake takes this personally.
Wake is like, but you like my lobster, right? You love my lobster. And
doesn't answer him.
Yeah. So Wake goes into this tirade of summoning like Poseidon to get his trident and smite Ephraim down.
Not only to strike him down, but to fill his organs with bilge, brine, and slime.
There we go.
Like, this gets intense. This is all until eventually a tentacle arm will come, hit him, and cause him to explode. And I was just like, what the hell did I just hear?
Yeah, it is absolutely wild.
He mentions the harpies and the souls of dead sailors, which are seagulls that will peck and feed on the dead corpse, will take him into those infinite waters.
Spoiler.
He also mentions that everyone will forget Winslow, as he will no longer be Winslow, which is another afterthought to the never-ending sea.
Yeah, it is epic.
And as this happens, you hear the thunder cracking. It's almost like he's in control of the entire sea when he says this.
Yeah.
And he's drawing this storm ever closer. Tons of foreshadowing here. Tons of references to Greek mythology, which play out throughout this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of mythology in this movie, as we've gone into, like, detail already with all the sea stories, but like you said, gods play a pretty big role in like the theme of
the Lighthouse,
yeah.
for sure. So in the middle of the night...
He tries to pick the lock of the lighthouse, but he can't get into the lighthouse.
Correct. Could not get into the lighthouse.
So then he goes back to the cabin. He picks that lock.
And where's the logbook? Not there. Where is it? On the chest of the sleeping Thomas Wake.
But what does he also see there? The key.
So he looks to try to swipe the key from his sleeping body, but he has a better idea.
Yes. He takes the knife and he puts it to Thomas Wake's throat.
He's saying, well, why not? Why am I going to try to steal the key? I could just kill him and take the key. It'll be a lot easier than waking him up and having that altercation.
Much simpler. Problem is, he makes a creak, and then Willem Dafoe farts himself awake.
Yeah, it's interesting because he doesn't, grab him. And Wake looks him in the eye, and he kind of just mumbles in his sleep. Ephraim kind of says, Wake, it's going to be a long night. Go back to sleep. And Wake's very tired, says, get some sleep before the day breaks, and he tries to go back to bed and farts again.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to your duties. And Winslow tells him that he's only tolerable when he's drunk, and lets out another maniacal-looking grin. So the multiple shots, so Winslow performing his duties again, drinking and masturbating to the mermaid figurine. As he's pulling this crate to sea, if you notice him at the top and the edge of that cliff, he's pulling a crate. Now this is almost like all these scenes and shots are happening one after another. Yeah. But the most important part is he's dragging the crate from the sea and pulling it up the cliff. And these multiple shots, you see this vivid imagery of the mermaid from his nightmares. And you see this man with the white hair, and you see the image of the all-wonderful mermaid vagina.
Yes. While we're seeing all these images, and Ephraim Winslow is violently masturbating with the statue of the mermaid, you start to see the actual mermaid, and you see a giant mermaid vagina.
Yeah, and holy heck, they did it. He did it.
Yeah.
They showed it. You know what they made that mermaid vagina out of?
No.
Shark labia.
Ah, alright, well, accurate. Then you actually start to see Ephraim Winslow have sex with the mermaid. And you see his butt. And he's thrusting.
It's a butt shot. And you actually see, the imagery is interesting. You see this slimy looking thing that appears to be a penis going through a tentacle orifice.
Yeah, it's very weird.
You see the lighthouse being turned upside down. And this is, I guess the lighthouse is a representation of the phallic symbol.
Yeah. In this moment, definitely.
Yeah, it's a phallus.
Phallic symbol. Wicker Man quote for Nick Cage Wicker Man quote.
What a film.
That's a movie I can't wait to review another time. So after he just sits and starts crying and stabbing the broken in half mermaid statue.
He's like, I'm going nuts.
Yeah, he's literally at this point just losing his mind.
Is this real? Is this a fever dream? Mm-hmm. So then he pulls in the crate. And what does the crate reveal?
Another dead body.
A dead body. What is the dead body missing?
Eye.
An eye. What did he just recently kill that had one eye?
Seagull.
Yep.
So he pulls in the actual sailor that was the seagull, essentially. That's what the connection is there.
And who's this guy? This is the previous lighthouse keeper that Thomas Wake killed. So the scene transitions to them drinking, dancing, and singing more shanties. Like I said, they continuously have this cycle.
And this leads to we gotta backtrack. Is the mermaid scene worthy of a passion bump?
Okay, so yes, it is. This is the hottest thing I've seen since the earlier mermaid scene.
Yeah, no, because there's been a lot of self stuff, but this is the first time you get two people, and the passion finger. It was probably going for Mike G if he had seen this movie.
This is a tremendous passion bump. When you see a dude bang a mermaid, you see
never.
In these fantasy movies, you see people maybe form relationships with mermaids, but bang a mermaid?
You don't see it. And just for people who are listening for the first time or don't know, we have a friend, Mike G, who when he sees passion, he has a finger that starts going up and down if he thinks it's a passionate scene. So we consider that the passion bump.
Of this movie, absolutely. So this movie does have passion, even though you never would seeing the cast of just Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
And that's why I want to bring that up. Because now, going back to where we were, they start to slow dance together. They start to get close, they're almost going to kiss.
Yeah.
But they don't. They back up. And I was like, oh my god, we almost got a dude kiss.
Oh, I would have loved a little dude snack. So they're laying next to each other, and Ephraim reveals that his name is Thomas Howard. not Ephraim.
Yes. So he's been lying. He's been full of shit the entire movie.
And it's interesting because like Wake's like, don't spill your beans, but Howard mentions it. He does spill his beans, but he keeps telling him not to spill his beans. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, why does he keep telling him not to spill his beans? I don't know if this is like one of those things where his character is like, are you trying to guilt me into telling you who I really am? And he doesn't know if he could trust him or not. He even mentions, I could trust you. No, wait, I can't trust you. But he tells him anyway. And this reveal is very, very important because Cat's out of the bag, and as Wake's character mentions, he spills his beans. Why'd you spill his beans? Why'd you put that out there?
So what are his beans? What does he spill?
He admits to watching, you could say murdering, but I would say watching his employer, Ephraim Winslow, die.
Exactly. And how did he die? He was swallowed by logs. So this whole time, this recurring nightmare that he's been having has been of the guy he essentially, in a way, murdered because he didn't help him. He watched him die. And he stole his name.
He stole his identity. So now we know he killed the guy when he was back working in the timber industry, took his name, and came here to work as a wickie. Ephraim mentions, or Thomas Howard newly revealed, that Ephraim called him Tommy. He said, Tommy, you dog. And this is something that Wake told him before. He called him a dog as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's conflating stories or it's just like this guy's just really going insane.
After all this happens, I guess Winslow's finally fed up with everything that's going on. So he's outside. He goes outside. The whole movie, there's a small boat there, but the waves have been too crazy. You can't take the dinghy out and survive. But Winslow's had enough. He's taken the dinghy and he's about to leave. And then Thomas Wake comes with the axe and just breaks the boat with the axe. And then
wrecks it.
And then he starts chasing him back to the house. And at this point, you're like, okay, wow. So this is actually going to be Willem Dafoe killing Robert Pattinson. But then when they get inside, it happens again. Thomas Wake says, Winslow's the one who chased him with the axe and hit everything. And now you're just like, oh my god. I'm crazy because I don't know what's going on here.
He's either driving him insane intentionally, or they're conflating perspectives. Maybe in some way, he is chasing him with an axe.
Yeah. It's just like, which one is it? Like,
let's err to the idea that Wake was chasing him with an axe like we saw on screen.
Yeah. No, I truly believe at that scene that it was Wake chasing Ephraim Winslow, whatever you actually want to call him at this point.
Thomas Howard, yeah. And like he's been steadily doing throughout the film, planting these ideas and driving him crazier and crazier. They go back to the house, he's like, I'm going to report you for abandoning your post because you tried to leave.
One thing we didn't mention, because it's going to come in here, they then sit down and they start drinking. What we didn't mention earlier is that they had run out of alcohol and had started drinking kerosene, which is actually pretty important because I'm not a doctor, but I don't think it's healthy to drink kerosene. And I'm going to say maybe it can lead to psychosis.
Yeah, so it's definitely a blend of hallucinations. You really don't know. They've been running out of rations, exactly when they ran out, exactly when they started drinking the oil fuel. After he tried to wreck the boat and they had this little confrontation, Wake tells him to hand over the knife he pocketed at dinner. So Wake saw him pocket the knife. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how is this possible? Wake was drunk. He couldn't have seen him take the knife. This is like one of those movies where like I'm almost thinking to myself, are they the same person?
Right.
Like one of those psychological thriller movies. But I don't think that's the case.
I don't think so either.
And what's equally interesting about this scene, Ephraim confronts him and he basically starts laughing and he says he's got everything figured out. He made the previous lighthouse keeper go mad with his charm and his mermaid figurine, and now he's realized that he's making him go insane. He's free of his design, and he knows everything about him except for what's in that light.
And that's what he wants to know more than anything.
And this is a great scene because then Wake's like, how long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks? 2 days? Where are we? And then he starts going into the idea this is just a figment of his imagination.
Right.
So he's like putting the idea that we're both the same person to the audience.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, this is all a figment. You're imagining this, who you are, who I am.
At this point, I'm like, okay. I think it has just been Willem Dafoe's character trying to drive Robert Pattinson insane. This is actually what he does. I think what it is that the light is almost like a goddess to Willem Dafoe, And so he wants that all to himself. And that's why he drives his lighthouse keepers, his partners mad, to keep them away from it so he can have it all to himself.
At this point, like I said, the wind is picking up, the storm is raging. You start hearing sirens, merfolk, all these things from mythology.
The foghorn.
Blaring foghorn comes back.
I'm sure if you listen very closely, you can even hear a fart.
So they're like kind of like scrunched under a table, and then you just see this water just punch through the window.
Oh, big wave comes through. And that's when you cut to the next day, pretty much.
Yeah,
and everything is a wreck.
It's in shambles. Howard notices the logbook floating, and then what does he do? He's been dying to see what's in that freaking logbook.
I love this scene so much.
So he picks up, he starts reading through the logbook, and the clock, you hear the clock in the background start to tick louder and louder. The screeching continues.
And in this logbook, not a single positive thing has been written about Winslow. Insubordinate, doesn't do what he's told, doesn't do his chores, fails to mop, docked all of his wages. If they get off this, if the relief ever comes, he wouldn't get anything anyway. And at this point, Winslow's he's done.
He's like, I hate your stories. I hate your darn leg. Everything about you isn't true. All he mentions to him, he even insults him. He's like, all you are is a lighthouse keeper. You're no captain. You're no father. He tells me he dislikes everything about him, including his farts.
Yep.
And then he smells.
And he says, your farts.
Yeah.
Your farts.
And then he's like, you're a liar. Wake has a soft moment. He's like, you have a wage with words, Tommy.
So at this point, there's really only one thing left for them to do. They fight. And
it's about time, right?
Yeah, and Winslow almost kills Wake. He just repeatedly punches him in the face.
And as he's beating the hell out of him, you don't even know who he's punching anymore.
That's right.
If you notice, like, the faces of who he's punching blend. So you see him punching Wake, then Wake turns into Ephraim, the former guy that he killed. Then you just start seeing hands touch Pattinson's face, and he puts a finger in his mouth. It's the mermaid. It's the mermaid. The passion finger's wiggling again, Shady boy.
Woo! By the way, back-to-back movies where fingers go in mouths.
And then, all of a sudden, you see a tentacle start wrapping him around. It's this Lovecraftian beast that's getting over him.
It's Cthulhu.
And choking him. What's face? It's Wake's face, like, with like a barnacle and like a starfish on it. Like real sea-like.
Yes.
Like something in a Pirates of the Caribbean. And then he says he's killing him, so eventually Howard stops.
And then he gets up. So Winslow, after being called a dog the entire movie, stands up over mortally wounded, pretty much, Wake, and says, bark for me.
Bark for me. And he does.
And he does. Woof. Woof.
And you know what's cool? He doesn't, like, stop. He keeps woofing.
Yes.
He's playing the dog.
And then, next scene is Robert Pattinson walking out of the building. He has a leash. He has Thomas Wake attached to the leash, walking like a dog. It looks like Carol Baskin and her second husband. He then throws Wake into a hole, starts burying him alive. But first, he stops because he takes the lighthouse key.
He makes sure to grab that from his buried corpse before he leaves him in there completely. Before he completely submerges him in dirt, he starts reciting more Greek mythology.
Correct.
He's like, basically tells him, I've known others that have a similar path as you, and they're going to get punished just like you, and they were punished just like you are.
So after he says that, he has the key, he goes back into the house, and before he could do anything, Wake is out of the hole, hits Robert Pattinson in the shoulder with the axe.
Like a pickaxe,
yes. Too. And they stare at each other, and then Winslow just grabs it and kills Wake. He just beats him with the axe, the pickaxe.
It's such a simple scene. He wakes on the ground, he just takes this thing and just...
one whack.
It's over.
So then, there's only one thing left.
He has to ascend the lighthouse now that he has the key, and he gets to go into the station.
He goes up, he opens the hatch, he looks around, he sees the light.
And the whole movie has culminated to this point.
Yes. He opens the lighthouse light, and he stares into it. And he's just staring into it at first. And then he starts screaming.
He starts screaming and screaming at the top of his lungs.
And the scream becomes like distorted. The scream becomes distorted.
Yeah, it's an odd monochrome color that they use for this.
And then he's just yelling and yelling and yelling. And then it's so much, he can't take it. And he falls down every single step of the lighthouse around the circle.
Spiral. This is a spiraling staircase. He falls down.
And then the last shot of the movie is Ephraim Winslow naked on the rocks, being eaten alive by the birds, which is exactly what Thomas Wake said he wanted to happen to him in an earlier scene.
Exactly. And you see him missing an eye.
Yes.
You see him missing an eye, just like the seagull. He's alive, he's seeing this happen, and this is essentially going to play out forever.
Yeah.
Kind of like an endless cycle of him getting eaten by this bird, just nipping at his intestines and entrails. Brutal scene, very powerful, and that's how the film ends. I was just absolutely floored when I saw this scene.
Yeah, it was incredible. Before we go into like our final thoughts, and obviously now it's up for interpretation, but what do you think was in the light? What do you think you saw? What do you think it represents?
That's the biggest question. And the cool thing about this movie is everything is based off mythology.
Yes.
Who Wake is, who Thomas Howard is. Mm-hmm. So in Greek mythology, there's someone known as Prometheus, who's like this trickster, stole fire from the gods, and was punished for it by, I believe, Zeus, who chained him up to a rock on cycle every day of getting eaten at by a gull.
Which is essentially what happened.
Which is him. Now, Wake's character is Proteus, from what I know. And Proteus is the god of the sea, basically. Mm-hmm. He's known as like the old seaman. And he basically watches over the sea. People say he's like a protean form. He's like all knowledgeable. The lighthouse keeper.
Yes.
The lighthouse, of course, representing Mount Olympus. Yeah. So it's like his idea of kind of defying and killing this god and stealing his most prized possession, which is the fire or the light.
Exactly. Essentially, the light was like the power of the gods.
Power of the gods,
and
all
Willem
knowledge.
Dafoe was, yes, and Willem Dafoe was the keeper of that. He was the protector of that. And that's why he didn't let Robert Pattinson in, essentially, because he wasn't ready. He wasn't worthy to get that. So that's why when he finally kills him and gets there, he can't handle what's in the light. And that's why he falls down the stairs and screams. You know what?
And it's so cool because Proteus is like this character. You think he's like half monster, half beast, and that's why when he looks up and has this dream, it's like you see the tentacles of the beast up there. So it's really cool how they blend the mythology into this movie. There's so many theories that we can discuss. I mentioned how there's like a Reddit theory almost that were like people think they're really just one character. It's really just Ephraim Winslow dealing with his own insanity.
I don't like that.
And like Wake's just another like almost like older version of himself, kind of like picking at him and kind of like judging what he's done wrong. But it really doesn't. There's a lot of things that don't make sense and why that theory would apply. It's like, then why would you have to take the light from yourself?
Me personally, I think it makes more sense with Dafoe being the keeper of the light.
I think that theory is kind of garbage. It's really both of them. The one character, obviously the wise man, a jealous god, if you want to call him, a jealous person in his own right, wants all the knowledge to himself and kind of always keeps the other guy at length, which he's done with the previous lighthouse keeper that he killed and this one. But of course, this one was definitely emphatic and would do anything to get up into that light.
Yes.
So I think, with all that being said, this movie is absolutely incredible. We score movies here on a rating of 1 to 10. I originally wrote down an 8. I had to change it to a 9. As I mentioned, this is the best horror movie that I've seen since Midsommar of, I believe, mid-2019 of last year.
Yeah.
This one stayed with me after watching it. I watched it the first time, and I could not let the idea of that last scene kind of go without wanting to watch the film again. Like, it was mesmerizing, it was haunting. Great movie.
And if you couldn't tell, I completely agree with everything you just said. I also gave this movie a 9 out of 10. I think it is a fantastic piece of film work. Like, this is one of those things where it's like, I almost want to give it a 10, because I really don't see anything wrong with the movie. It's perfect. There's so much to it. There's so much you can look into it. It's not a movie you just watch and it's over. It's like you want to read about it, see what it's about, think about it. It's like, it's 100%. Perfect like that.
And this is a movie where like there's so many interpretations. None of them are right. None of them are wrong.
Exactly.
Like I mentioned on last week's episode, I think that nowadays too many movies do this idea of leaving it up to viewer interpretation. But you have to do it in a style that makes sense. And it obviously makes sense here.
Definitely.
Because everything's applicable. Both characters constantly cross perspectives, especially Wake, kind of reciting everything that Howard's character. He's like, what are you doing? Are you messing with me? Are you making me go mad? You're like, are you insane, old guy?
And that's what's great about this movie. It's like, while you're watching it, you don't know where it's going. Like, who's messing with who? Who's lying about what? Who, like...
And it makes you go insane when you're watching it.
Because you're like, oh my god, like, is it Dafoe the bad guy? Is Pattinson the bad guy? Neither of them alive. Is it just a purgatory? Like, what's going on? It's like...
Like I mentioned, this is just two men that give just unforgettable performances.
Yes.
I cannot recommend this movie enough to anybody who has an interest in untraditional horror films, but one where, like I mentioned, a horror is created by
the atmosphere.
The atmosphere. Solely on the atmosphere and by the tension of these two men.
Yeah. I alluded to it earlier where I was talking about The Witch. I gave The Witch an 8, and I gave this a 9. That's why I was saying, like, The Witch is great. Like, I love The Witch, but this is even better. So I would highly recommend to watch both of these films.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This one's special.
Yeah, some would say it hits a little different.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think that just about wraps it up for this episode, Shane boy.
Yeah, I would say it does. Now, fun fact, the movie we have planned for next week, we're going back to a more traditional horror route.
Yeah, ghouls, goblins, hot, passionate cabins?
Yes, because next week's movie has literally almost any villain you can think of, because we are going to be reviewing The Cabin in the Woods.
And this movie is something.
Yes. I love it.
I also enjoy it. And we cannot wait to do that one as well.
So we will see you next Monday at 6 a.m.
We don't even care that it's Memorial Day. We're putting one out.
Well, yeah, you got nothing else to do. We're all quarantined. What's open?
It's time for me to plug my side job as a used car salesman. Come down to Bryan and Shane's lot there at 6 a.m. We've got podcasting cars. You got Fords. We've got Nissans. That's it. That's all I got.
I was impressed because, one, you're not a used car salesman, and
No.
UK just came up with that. Bravo.
Well, I tell you,
Bravo.
the anti-theft car systems nowadays are just something to really chat about.
Yeah, you know what? That's going to be maybe our secondary podcast. Just we'll chat about cars and their parts.
There's no better way to pick up girls than to talk about car parts.
It's true. Like, look at this starter engine.
Have you checked my diesel fuel on my truck?
Yeah, I got a Hemi. That's a Joe Dirt reference.
Have you seen the horsepower on this one, big boy?
With all of that said, so thank you for listening. We have been Two Guys, One Necronomicon, and we will see you next weekend in a wooded house in the forest.
Yes. With Thor.